Commander Zexthy of the Galactic Research Fleet stared at the blue-green planet through the observation deck's transparent aluminum viewport. Earth hung before them like a jewel, its swirling white clouds masking what intelligence reports claimed was one of the most dangerous death worlds in their sector of the galaxy. "Sensors confirm the initial readings, Commander," reported Science Officer Vorth, her 4 arms dancing across the holographic interface with practiced efficiency. The planet's surface gravity is 1.3 times standard. Atmospheric oxygen levels are dangerously high at 21%. Electromagnetic storms rage across multiple continents, and the thermal readings suggest extreme temperature variations. Zexthy's scaled hide rippled with unease. The Kethvar had evolved on a peaceful world where the most aggressive creature was roughly equivalent to what humans might call a butterfly. The idea of a planet where survival required constant vigilance was foreign to everything his species understood about civilization. And yet, he mused, his translator converting his clicked speech into standard galactic, the humans not only survived this nightmare world, they thrived enough to achieve spaceflight and join the Galactic Council. The bridge fell silent except for the soft humming of the ship's systems. Every crew member present had read the reports. Humans were the first species encountered from a Class 12 death world. Most civilizations arose from Class 2 or Class 3 worlds at most. The very existence of human civilization challenged everything xenobiologists thought they knew about the development of sapient life. "Sir," Communications Officer Plexun interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human settlement on the northern continent. They're inviting us down for what they call a diplomatic dinner." Zexthy's inner eyelids fluttered nervously. Direct contact with Death World survivors. The potential for scientific discovery was enormous, but so was the risk. "Patch me through to their leader." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human male with strange fur covering only the top of his head and jaw area. The creature smiled, revealing flat teeth with 4 sharp points. Predator teeth, Zexthy realized with a chill. "Greetings." "Commander Zexthy," the human said in perfect galactic standard. "I'm Governor Harrison of New Eden Colony. We've been looking forward to meeting our new neighbors. Would you and your senior staff care to join us for dinner tonight? We'd love to show you around our settlement." Every instinct screamed at Zexthy to politely decline. This human, this predator, was inviting them into what could only be a trap. Yet the creature's demeanor seemed genuinely friendly, even warm. The contradiction was puzzling. We would be honored, Governor Harrison," Zexthy managed to reply. "However, we should inform you that our species has dietary restrictions. We are obligate herbivores." The human's smile widened, showing more of those alarming teeth. "Not a problem at all, Commander. We've got plenty of plant-based options. Our agricultural domes produce some of the finest vegetables this side of the Orion Arm. 6 o'clock local time work for you?" After agreeing to the meeting and ending the transmission, Zexthy turned to his science team. Full biosafety protocols, personal energy shields, atmospheric filters, and emergency beam-out trackers for everyone in the landing party. 2 hours later, their shuttle descended through Earth's turbulent atmosphere. The pilot, veteran spacer Quintal, fought the controls as violent air currents buffeted their craft. "This is insane," he muttered. "How do they live in this chaos?" As they broke through the cloud cover, the landscape below revealed itself to be a mixture of ordered agricultural zones and wild, untamed forests. In the distance, massive creatures moved through the trees. The shuttle's sensors identified them as something called elephants, herbivores weighing several tons each. "If their plant eaters are that large," whispered Science Officer Vorth, "what do their predators look like?" The New Eden colony was a modest settlement of perhaps 50,000 humans, built in a valley between rolling hills. Clean energy readings suggested they used fusion power, while organized field patterns indicated sophisticated agriculture. As their shuttle approached the designated landing pad, Zexthy noticed several four-legged creatures moving around the settlement's perimeter. The landing was surprisingly smooth, despite the planet's chaotic weather patterns. As the shuttle's engines wound down, Governor Harrison approached their craft, flanked by several other humans. Zexthy was relieved to note they appeared unarmed, though he reminded himself that humans were reportedly dangerous enough without weapons. The shuttle's doors hissed open, and Zexthy took his first breath of Earth's atmosphere through his filter mask. The oxygen content immediately made him feel slightly dizzy, confirming just how alien this world truly was. "Commander Zexthy," Governor Harrison said, extending his hand in what Zexthy's briefings had identified as a human greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth. I hope your journey wasn't too rough." Zexthy cautiously extended his own three-fingered hand and was surprised by the gentle firmness of the human's grip. No crushing force, no display of dominance. Just a simple, warm welcome. "Thank you for hosting us, Governor. Your world is quite remarkable." Harrison laughed, a sound that made several of Zexthy's crew members take a nervous step backward. "That's one way to put it. Come on, let me show you around before dinner. I think you'll find our setup pretty interesting." As they walked through the settlement's main thoroughfare, Zexthy noticed the four-legged creatures he'd spotted from the air. They were everywhere. Some were large and furry, others smaller with pointed ears and long tails. All of them moved freely among the humans without restraint. "Governor," Zexthy said carefully, "are those creatures livestock?" Harrison paused and looked confused for a moment before following Zexthy's gaze to a large, golden-furred animal lying in the sun near a group of human children. "Oh, you mean the dogs and cats? No, they're not livestock. They're our companions, family members." "Really? Family members?" Vorth squeaked from behind her translator. "But our scans indicate they're predators. Look at those teeth, those claws." Harrison knelt down and called to the golden creature. "Here, Murphy, come say hello to our guests." To Zexthy's absolute horror, the predator bounded over to them, its tongue hanging out and its tail wagging energetically. It was easily large enough to take down one of his crew members, its mouth filled with sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Good boy," Harrison said affectionately, scratching behind the creature's ears. The predator leaned into the touch, making a rumbling sound that vibrated in its chest. "Murphy here is a golden retriever. He's been with my family for 8 years now. Best friend a person could ask for." Zexthy stared in disbelief as the deadly predator rolled over onto its back, exposing its vulnerable belly to the human in a display of complete trust and submission. This violated every principle of predator behavior he'd ever studied. But it's a carnivore," he stammered. "Our sensors detect the chemical markers of a hunter. Why isn't it attacking you? Why isn't it competing with you for resources?" Harrison's expression grew thoughtful. "Well, that's a long story that goes back about 40,000 years. See, our ancestors figured out that some predators could be partners instead of competitors. We domesticated them, bred them to work with us, live with us. They became part of our families." "Domesticated?" Vorth's voice was barely a whisper. "You mean you tamed apex predators?" "Murphy's ancestors were wolves," Harrison explained casually, as if discussing the weather. "Pack hunters that could take down prey much larger than themselves. But we formed an alliance with them. They helped us hunt. We shared our food and shelter. Over generations, they became what you see here." As if to emphasize the point, one of the smaller predators, Harrison had called them cats, leaped gracefully onto a nearby bench and began making a strange vibrating sound while rubbing against a human woman's leg. The woman smiled and picked up the creature, cradling it against her chest while it continued its rumbling vocalization. "That's purring," Harrison explained, noticing Zexthi's stare. "It means she's content. Cats purr when they're happy, relaxed, or sometimes when they're trying to comfort themselves or others." Zexthi's scientific mind reeled. Everything he was witnessing contradicted established xenobiological theory. Predators didn't form symbiotic relationships with other species, especially not with potential prey. They certainly didn't show affection or contentment through specialized vocalizations. "Governor," he said slowly, "how many species have humans domesticated?" Harrison scratched his chin thoughtfully. "Well, let's see. Dogs and cats, obviously. Horses, cattle, pigs, chickens, sheep, goats. I'd say we've formed working relationships with hundreds of species over the millennia. Some for food, some for labor, some just for companionship." "Hundreds?" Vorth nearly dropped her scanner. "You formed cooperative relationships with hundreds of different species?" "Sure. Humans have always been good at making friends." Harrison grinned. "Even with species that started out trying to eat us. Take horses, for example. A wild horse can kick hard enough to shatter bones, bite with enough force to take off fingers, and run at speeds that would let them easily escape most predators. But we figured out how to work together. Now they're some of our most trusted partners." As they continued their tour, Zexthi documented everything with growing amazement. Humans lived in harmony with creatures that should have been either prey or competitors. They'd somehow convinced apex predators to not only coexist with them, but to actively protect and serve them. The most shocking revelation came when they passed a fenced area where massive four-legged herbivores grazed peacefully. These were the cattle Harrison had mentioned, and they were enormous, easily large enough to trample a human without effort. "They're so docile," Vorth observed, watching as a human child walked safely among the giants. "Selective breeding," Harrison explained. "We chose the calmest, most cooperative individuals to reproduce. After thousands of generations, we ended up with animals that trust us completely. They know we'll protect them from predators and provide them with food and medical care. In return, they give us milk, leather, and eventually meat." Zexthi was beginning to understand the true scope of human achievement. They hadn't just survived on a death world. They'd recruited the death world's other inhabitants to help them thrive. They'd turned a planet full of competitors and threats into an army of allies. "Commander," Communications Officer Plexen whispered urgently in his ear, "we're detecting more creatures approaching the settlement. Large ones." Harrison noticed their increased alertness and followed their gaze toward the tree line. "Oh, that'll be the evening patrol coming in. Don't worry, they're friendly." Zexthi's blood chilled as he saw what emerged from the forest. 3 humans rode atop massive four-legged creatures, each the size of a small shuttle. The beasts moved with fluid grace despite their enormous bulk, their riders controlling them with apparent ease. "Horses," Harrison said proudly. "Descended from wild prey animals, but we've been partners for over 6,000 years. Best way to cover rough terrain quickly. Plus, there's nothing quite like the bond between a human and their horse." As Zexthi watched, one of the riders dismounted and approached their group. The massive creature, this horse, followed docilely behind like an oversized pet. The human casually reached up to pat the animal's neck, and it lowered its head to nuzzle against him affectionately. "Good evening, Governor," the rider said. "Everything quiet on the perimeter. The motion sensors picked up some deer near Sector 7, but no signs of the mountain lions that were spotted yesterday." "Mountain lions?" Zexthi asked faintly. "Oh, we've got quite a few large predators in the area," Harrison said matter-of-factly. "Mountain lions, bears, wolves, they generally leave us alone, but we keep an eye on them just to be safe. Speaking of which, you'll probably hear the coyotes singing tonight. Don't worry if it sounds alarming, they're just communicating with each other." The casual way Harrison discussed living alongside multiple apex predators made Zexithi's head spin. His own species would have considered such a situation an existential threat, requiring immediate evacuation or military intervention. These humans treated it as a minor inconvenience. As the sun began to set, painting the alien sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Harrison led them toward a large building at the settlement's center. The promised dinner awaited, and Zexthi found himself genuinely curious about what other surprises this remarkable species might reveal. "Just one more question, Governor," he said as they approached the dining hall. "The predators you've domesticated, do they ever revert? Do they ever remember their wild nature and turn on you?" Harrison paused at the entrance and considered the question seriously. "It's rare, but it can happen. That's why we breed for temperament and socialize them from birth. But, Commander, I think you're missing the bigger picture here." "Which is?" Harrison's smile was enigmatic. "We didn't just tame predators. We convinced them that protecting humans was worth dying for. Tomorrow, I'll show you what happens when something threatens our settlement. Then you'll really understand what makes humanity unique." As they entered the dining hall, Zexthi couldn't shake the feeling that he was only beginning to comprehend the true implications of what he'd witnessed. If humans could turn apex predators into devoted guardians, what other impossible things might they be capable of? The answer, he suspected, would challenge everything the galaxy thought it knew about civilization itself. The dining hall buzzed with quiet conversation as humans and aliens shared their first meal together. True to Governor Harrison's word, the vegetables were exceptional, though Zexthi found himself barely able to focus on the food. Every few minutes, another domesticated predator would wander through the hall, accepting casual pets from diners before continuing on their way. "The social integration is remarkable," Science Officer Vorth whispered to him, watching a small feline creature leap onto an empty chair and settle down for a nap. "These predators show no territorial aggression, no resource-guarding behavior. It's as if they've been genetically programmed to view humans as pack leaders." Dr. Sarah Chen, the colony's chief veterinarian, overheard their conversation from across the table. "Actually, that's not far from the truth," she said, her voice carrying the enthusiasm of someone passionate about her field. "Thousands of years of selective breeding have essentially rewired their social instincts. Dogs, for instance, have retained juvenile characteristics throughout their adult lives. We call it neoteny." "Neoteny?" Zexthi repeated the unfamiliar term. "Basically, they keep puppy-like traits even as adults. The playfulness, the eagerness to please, the willingness to accept humans as authority figures. We've essentially created a species of permanent children who never challenge the pack hierarchy." Communications Officer Plexen's tendrils quivered with nervous energy. "But surely there must be failures? Individuals who revert to their predatory nature?" Dr. Chen's expression grew more serious. "It does happen, though rarely. When it does, we have protocols in place. But you'd be amazed how often the other animals step in to correct problematic behavior before we even notice it." As if summoned by their conversation, a commotion erupted outside the dining hall. Harsh barking echoed through the night, followed by human shouts and the sound of running feet. Harrison immediately stood, his relaxed demeanor shifting to alert focus. "Excuse me," he said to his alien guests. "Sounds like we might have a situation. Dr. Chen, would you mind explaining things to our visitors while I check on this?" The governor strode toward the exit, and Zexthi noticed that several other humans casually followed, their movements purposeful but unhurried. Whatever was happening outside, they'd clearly dealt with similar situations before. "What kind of situation?" Zexthi asked Dr. Chen, his translator struggling with the urgency in his voice. "Could be anything," she replied, moving to a window overlooking the settlement's main area. "Wildlife encounter, maybe? or one of the dogs picked up an unfamiliar scent. They take their job as guardians very seriously. Through the window, Zexthi could see dozens of the domesticated predators, dogs, he corrected himself, streaming toward the settlement's perimeter. Their earlier docile behavior had vanished, replaced by focused intensity that raised every survival instinct he possessed. "Their job?" Vorth squeaked. "Oh yes," Dr. Chen said matter-of-factly. "They're working animals first and foremost. Companionship is wonderful, but they earn their keep. The dogs patrol our borders, alert us to threats, and protect our livestock. The cats control rodent populations that would otherwise destroy our crops. Everyone has a purpose." The barking intensified, and now Zexthi could hear something else, a deep rumbling sound that seemed to vibrate through the building's structure. His crew members instinctively huddled closer together. "What is that noise?" Plexen demanded. Before Dr. Chen could answer, Governor Harrison's voice crackled through the settlement's communication system. "Attention all residents. We have a large brown bear approximately 2 kilometers southeast of the main settlement. The situation is under control, but please remain indoors until further notice." "A bear?" Zexthi's translator nearly overloaded trying to convey his panic. Their briefings had mentioned these creatures, apex predators weighing up to 800 kilograms with claws capable of shredding steel and jaws that could crush bone. Dr. Chen noticed their distress and smiled reassuringly. "Don't worry, our dogs will handle it. Brown bears are magnificent animals, but they're not really a match for a coordinated pack response." "Your dogs are going to fight a bear?" Vorth's voice climbed to a near shriek. "Fight? Oh no, nothing so dramatic. Watch." Dr. Chen activated a wall display that showed feeds from cameras positioned around the settlement's perimeter. The aliens pressed close to the screen, watching as dozens of dogs moved through the darkness with military precision. They'd formed a wide semicircle around a massive, shaggy form that Zexthi recognized as the bear in question. The bear was enormous, easily 3 times the size of the largest dog present. It reared up on its hind legs, standing nearly 3 meters tall, and let out a roar that made the building's windows rattle. Any sane creature should have fled immediately. Instead, the dogs held their ground. They didn't attack. They simply stood there, a living wall of determined predators blocking the bear's path toward the settlement. Their barking had taken on a rhythmic quality, almost like a coordinated chant. "Incredible," breathed Science Officer Vorth. "They're not showing fear responses. Their biochemistry should be flooding them with stress hormones, triggering flight reflexes." "They've been bred for courage," Dr. Chen explained. "These aren't wild dogs motivated by hunger or territorial disputes. They're working with a higher purpose, protecting their human family. That overrides basic survival instincts." On the screen, the bear dropped to all fours and began moving laterally, looking for a gap in the canine barrier. The dogs shifted with fluid coordination, maintaining their formation, while several humans appeared at the edge of the camera's range. Zexthi could see Governor Harrison among them, carrying what looked like some sort of non-lethal deterrent device. "The humans are intervening," Zexthi observed. "Will they kill the bear?" Dr. Chen looked shocked. "Kill it? Why would we do that? The bear isn't evil, it's just hungry or curious. We'll encourage it to move along, maybe leave some food at the forest edge to keep it satisfied. No need for violence." The demonstration continued for another 10 minutes. The dogs maintained their perimeter while the humans used noisemakers and bright lights to encourage the bear to retreat. Throughout the entire encounter, not a single shot was fired, not a single animal was harmed. The bear eventually shambled back into the forest, clearly deciding that easier meals could be found elsewhere. "Status report." Harrison's voice came through the comm system again. "All clear. The bear is heading back toward the mountain ridge. Good work, everyone. Normal patrol patterns resuming now." As the dogs began to disperse, their earlier intensity dissolved back into the casual friendliness Zexthi had observed during the day. Several stopped to accept congratulatory pets from their human handlers before trotting back to whatever they'd been doing before the alert. "That's it?" Plexen asked incredulously. "They just sent it away? Why would we do anything else?" Dr. Chen returned to her seat, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "The bear wasn't actually threatening anyone. It was just investigating our settlement. The dogs did their job by establishing a clear boundary, and the humans provided backup to ensure nobody got hurt." Zexthi stared at the now peaceful display screens, trying to process what he'd witnessed. A coordinated defense involving dozens of predators, executed with military precision, all to protect a human settlement without causing harm to the supposed threat. "Dr. Chen," he said slowly, "in your expert opinion, how many of those dogs would have died if the bear had attacked?" She considered the question seriously. "Against a full-grown brown bear? Probably 3 or 4, maybe more. Bears are incredibly dangerous. And yet they stood their ground. Even knowing they might die, they protected you." "Of course they did," Dr. Chen said, as if the answer was obvious. "We're their pack, their family. They'd die before they'd let harm come to us." Science Officer Vorth's scanners had been running continuously throughout the encounter. "Commander," she whispered urgently, "I'm detecting impossible biochemical readings. The stress hormones I mentioned earlier, they weren't elevated in the dogs during the confrontation. Their neurochemistry showed elevated levels of what I can only describe as satisfaction. They were enjoying themselves." "They love having a job to do," Dr. Chen confirmed. "Dogs are happiest when they feel useful, when they're contributing to the pack's welfare. Protecting us isn't a burden. It's their greatest joy." Governor Harrison returned to the dining hall, looking completely relaxed, despite having just faced down a massive predator. "Sorry about that interruption, folks. Where were we?" "Governor," Zexthi said carefully, "we just witnessed something that challenges fundamental assumptions about predator behavior. How is this possible?" Harrison settled back into his chair and considered the question. "Well, Commander, I think it comes down to mutual benefit. We don't dominate our animal partners. We collaborate with them. They get food, shelter, medical care, and a sense of purpose. We get companionship, protection, and labor. Everyone wins." "But the risks," Plexen protested. "Living surrounded by predators depending on their loyalty. What happens if they decide your arrangement is no longer beneficial?" "Then we adapt," Harrison said simply. "But Commander, I think you're still thinking about this wrong. These aren't wild predators we've somehow convinced to tolerate us. They're the result of thousands of generations of selective breeding. We've shaped them just as much as they've shaped us." Dr. Chen nodded enthusiastically. "Humans today are different from our ancestors too. We've evolved to communicate with our animal partners, to read their body language and emotional states. The relationship has changed both species involved." Zexthi found himself thinking about his own species' evolution. The Kethvar had achieved civilization through cooperation and consensus, but they'd never formed cross-species alliances. The idea of deliberately breeding other life forms to serve as partners was both fascinating and mildly disturbing. "There's something else you should understand," Harrison continued. "The dogs you saw tonight weren't just protecting our settlement. They were protecting their territory, their food source, their offspring. We've made them stakeholders in our success." "Offspring?" Vorth looked confused. "Many of our working dogs have puppies," Dr. Chen explained. "We help them raise their young, provide veterinary care during pregnancy and birth, ensure the pups are properly socialized. The adult dogs know their offspring's welfare depends on the settlement's security." The implications were staggering. Humans had not only domesticated predators, they'd created multi-generational investment in human success. The dogs weren't just serving present masters, they were protecting their own family line's future prosperity. How many species are involved in these arrangements? Zexthy asked. On Earth? Hundreds of domesticated species, plus thousands more that we have working relationships with, Harrison said. Bees pollinate our crops in exchange for garden space and protection. Birds control insect populations that would otherwise devastate our agriculture. Even some wild predators like wolves and eagles receive protected status in exchange for maintaining ecological balance. You've essentially created a planet-wide network of interspecies cooperation, Vorth said, her scientific mind clearly racing through the implications. That's one way to look at it, Harrison agreed. But from our perspective, we just made friends with the neighbors. Turns out, when you treat other species with respect and offer mutual benefit, amazing things become possible. As the evening progressed, the aliens learned more details that continued to challenge their understanding of natural law. Humans had bred dogs capable of detecting medical conditions before symptoms appeared. They'd developed cats that could predict earthquakes. They'd created horses so bonded with their riders that they could anticipate commands before they were given. Most remarkably, they'd done all of this while maintaining the individual personalities and apparent happiness of their animal partners. The dogs they'd observed weren't mindless automatons. They showed distinct preferences, playful behaviors, and what could only be described as emotions. "Commander," Plexen said quietly, as the formal dinner began winding down, "our initial assessment of humans as dangerous predators was incomplete." "How so?" "They're not just dangerous predators. They're pack leaders capable of recruiting entire ecosystems to serve their interests. A human settlement isn't just a collection of individuals. It's the apex of a complex web of interspecies alliances." Zexthy nodded thoughtfully. Everything they'd witnessed pointed to a disturbing conclusion. Humans were far more formidable than anyone had realized. Not because of their individual capabilities, but because of their unprecedented ability to turn potential enemies into devoted allies. "Governor," he said as the evening came to a close, "you mentioned that tomorrow you would show us what happens when something threatens your settlement. After tonight's demonstration, I'm almost afraid to ask what you meant." Harrison's smile was enigmatic. "Tonight you saw our passive defenses, detection and deterrent. Tomorrow, if you're interested, I'll show you what happens when someone actually means us harm. Fair warning, though, it might change how you think about human military doctrine." As they prepared to return to their ship for the night, Zexthy couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the verge of discovering something that would revolutionize galactic understanding of warfare itself. The humans hadn't just survived their death world, they'd recruited it as an ally. What did that mean for species that might foolishly consider humanity an enemy? Tomorrow, he suspected, they were about to find out, the morning air carried the sense of a world alive with countless species, each pursuing their own survival in the endless dance of predator and prey that characterized this remarkable death world. Zexthy stood at the observation deck of their shuttle, watching the sun rise over New Eden Colony, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples that no civilized world could produce. "Commander," Communications Officer Plexen announced, "we're receiving a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They're requesting an immediate report on our findings." Zexthy's hide rippled with unease. How could he possibly explain what they'd witnessed in terms the Council would accept? That humans had somehow convinced apex predators to die for them? That an entire planet's ecosystem had been recruited as a defense force? The claims would sound like the fantasies of an unbalanced mind. "Tell them we're still gathering data," he replied. "We'll file a complete report upon our return." Governor Harrison's voice crackled through their comm system. "Good morning, Commander. Ready for today's demonstration? I've arranged something special that I think will give you a better understanding of how our partnerships really work." An hour later, they were transported to a training facility several kilometers from the main settlement. The area was surrounded by dense forest, with cleared fields providing space for what Harrison described as joint exercises. Zexthy noticed that the facility was equipped with various obstacles, targets, and what appeared to be simulation equipment. "Today, you'll see our emergency response team in action," Dr. Chen explained as she joined their group. "Every settlement on Earth maintains one. They're responsible for dealing with threats that can't be resolved through peaceful deterrence." "What kind of threats?" Science Officer Vorth asked, her scanners already detecting elevated stress chemicals in the surrounding area. "Oh, various things," Harrison said casually. "Natural disasters, equipment failures, occasionally hostile wildlife that can't be reasoned with. Very rarely we might encounter humans whose social conditioning has broken down completely." Before Zexthy could ask what that meant, a series of sharp whistles echoed across the training ground. Within moments, the forest around them came alive with movement. Dogs of various sizes emerged from concealment, but these were different from the domestic companions they'd met the previous day. These animals moved with military precision, their attention focused entirely on their human handlers. "These are our working breeds," Dr. Chen explained. "German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, Rottweilers, bred specifically for protection work and tactical operations." The dogs were indeed impressive specimens, larger and more muscular than their civilian counterparts. But what truly caught Zexthy's attention were their eyes, intelligent, alert, and completely focused on their handlers with an intensity that spoke of absolute dedication. "Phase 1, Harrison called out. "Search and identification." The handlers released their dogs with various hand signals, and the animals immediately dispersed across the training ground. They moved in coordinated patterns, systematically covering every meter of terrain while maintaining visual contact with each other and their humans. "What are they searching for?" Plexen asked. "Today we've hidden several targets throughout the area," Harrison explained. "Some are dummy threats, explosive devices, hidden weapons, that sort of thing. Others are volunteers playing the role of hostile intruders. The dogs need to find them all without missing any or generating false positives." Zexthy watched in fascination as the animals worked. Their movements were clearly the result of extensive training, but there was something more at play. The dogs seemed to genuinely understand the importance of their task, not just following commands, but actively problem-solving and adapting to changing conditions. Within 10 minutes, sharp barks began echoing from various points around the training ground. Each bark pattern was slightly different, and the human handlers seemed to understand the distinctions perfectly. "Rex found the simulated explosive device near the eastern perimeter," Harrison translated. "Luna's indicating human presence in the western tree line. Ajax has located the hidden weapons cache. They can distinguish between different types of threats." Vorth's voice carried scientific fascination mixed with disbelief. "Absolutely. Each type of target has a different scent signature, and they're trained to alert us with specific vocalizations for each one. But watch this. Now comes the interesting part." Harrison spoke into a comm unit. "All teams, initiate Phase 2, active threat protocols." The change was immediate and dramatic. The dog's body language shifted from alert searching to predatory focus. They moved with a fluid grace that reminded Zexthy uncomfortably that these were descendants of pack hunters capable of bringing down prey many times their own size. From the forest emerged several humans dressed in protective gear, playing the roles of hostile intruders. They carried training weapons and moved with obvious tactical knowledge, but they might as well have been standing still for all the good it did them. The dogs flowed through the underbrush like living shadows, appearing and disappearing with supernatural stealth. When they struck, it was with coordinated precision that would have impressed military strategists from any species in the galaxy. The first intruder went down under the combined assault of 3 dogs who attacked from different angles simultaneously. The man's protective gear prevented actual injury, but it was clear that without such protection, the encounter would have been fatal within seconds. Phase 2 complete, Harrison announced. Targets neutralized. Transition to Phase 3, area denial. Now the dogs spread out in a defensive perimeter, creating an impenetrable barrier around the training ground. Any attempt by the rescued intruders to escape was met by snarling predators who herded them back into the designated containment area. "This is remarkable," Zexthy admitted. "But surely this is the extent of your defensive capabilities." Harrison exchanged a meaningful look with Dr. Chen. "Actually, Commander, we're just getting started. What you've seen so far is our basic response team. For serious threats, we escalate to more specialized assets." A new sound reached them from the forest, a deep, rhythmic thumping that Zexthy felt in his bones as much as heard. The alien crew instinctively huddled together as the sound grew louder, accompanied by the crack of breaking branches and the thunder of massive footsteps. "What is that?" Plexen's translator barely managed to convey his panic. "That," Harrison said with obvious pride, "is our heavy response unit." The trees at the forest's edge parted, and Zexthy found himself staring at something that challenged his understanding of possibility itself. A human rider sat astride a creature that defied rational categorization, easily 4 meters tall at the shoulder, with massive curved tusks and a trunk that moved with obvious intelligence. "An elephant," Dr. Chen said simply. "Specifically, an Asian elephant named Hannibal. He and his handler have been partners for 15 years. The massive creature moved with surprising grace despite its enormous size, its rider guiding it with subtle shifts in posture rather than any visible reins or control devices. As it approached, Zexthy could see that the elephant was equipped with specially designed armor plating that protected its vital areas without restricting movement. "You militarized herbivores?" Vorth's voice cracked with disbelief. "Herbivores can be extremely dangerous when they choose to be," Harrison explained. "Elephants are incredibly intelligent, fiercely protective of their families, and capable of crushing most threats simply by stepping on them. They also have excellent memories and can be trained to recognize specific individuals or situations." The demonstration continued as more riders appeared, each mounted on a different species of massive herbivore. There were horses, but these were clearly bred for war, larger and more muscular than their civilian cousins, moving with the controlled aggression of trained warriors. There were cattle that had been similarly enhanced, their bulk and natural herd instincts turning them into living tanks. "How is this possible?" Zexthy whispered. "Prey animals should flee from conflict, not seek it out." "They're not seeking conflict," Dr. Chen corrected. "They're protecting their territory and their human family. We've given them something worth fighting for: security, purpose, offspring with guaranteed futures. In exchange, they're willing to risk their lives for ours." The true scope of the demonstration became clear as the various animal units began working together. The dogs served as scouts and fast attack forces. The horses provided mobility and psychological impact. The elephants and enhanced cattle formed an unstoppable heavy assault capability. All of it coordinated by humans who seemed to communicate with their animal partners through a combination of verbal commands, hand signals, and what appeared to be telepathic understanding. "Commander," Communications Officer Plexen said urgently, "we're receiving another priority transmission from the Council. They're demanding an immediate status report." The timing was unfortunate. At that moment, the training exercise reached its climax as a simulated aerial threat appeared overhead, a drone designed to represent hostile aircraft. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Birds of prey descended from seemingly empty skies, eagles, hawks, and other species that had been invisible until they chose to attack. They struck the drone with talons and beaks, tearing it apart in mid-air with the precision of guided missiles. Within seconds, the threat was neutralized and falling to Earth in pieces. "You've militarized the entire ecosystem," Zexthy said faintly. "We prefer to think of it as a comprehensive defense partnership. Harrison replied. Every species contributes according to their abilities. In return, every species benefits from the protection and resources we can provide. The implications were staggering. Earth wasn't just a planet that had produced one dangerous species. It was a world where that species had convinced countless others to join them in a planet-wide alliance. Any enemy attempting to invade would face not just human resistance, but the coordinated opposition of an entire biosphere. The transmission is still waiting, Commander, Plexen reminded him. Zexthy realized he had no choice. The Council needed to understand what they were dealing with, even if his report would sound like science fiction to species that had never encountered anything like humanity. Patch them through, he ordered. The familiar image of Council Speaker Torvan appeared on his comm unit, the elderly Zelkonian's expression showing the irritation of a busy bureaucrat dealing with what he clearly considered a routine matter. Commander Zexthy, Torvan began without preamble. Your mission was scheduled to last only 3 standard days. You're now approaching the end of your second day, and we've received no substantive reports. The Council requires immediate clarification of this human species' threat level and military capabilities. Zexthy looked around at the ongoing demonstration, dogs coordinating with horses, elephants working alongside armed humans, birds of prey circling overhead in perfect formation. How could he possibly explain this to a council that had never seen anything more dangerous than a butterfly? Honorable Speaker, he began carefully, the situation here is complex. Human military doctrine appears to be based on principles we've never encountered before. Explain. They don't maintain traditional military forces. Instead, they've formed cooperative alliances with the indigenous predator and prey species of their homeworld. Their defensive capabilities are integrated with their planet's entire ecosystem. Torvan's expression grew skeptical. Commander, are you suggesting that humans fight alongside wild animals? That's absurd. No species has ever successfully domesticated predators for military purposes. With respect, Honorable Speaker, I'm watching exactly that right now. They've bred predators specifically for combat operations, trained herbivores to serve as heavy assault units, and established communication protocols with aerial species for reconnaissance and anti-aircraft defense. The silence from the council chamber stretched uncomfortably long. When Torvan finally spoke, his voice carried a note of concern that Zexthy had never heard before. Commander, you're describing capabilities that could threaten the stability of the entire galactic order. Are you certain of these observations? Before Zexthy could answer, Governor Harrison stepped into the comm unit's field of view. Honorable Speaker Torvan, he said with a respectful nod. I'm Governor Harrison of New Eden Colony. Perhaps I can clarify things for you. Torvan's eyes widened as he found himself face to face with a human for the first time. You're the local authority figure? One of them, yes. I understand your concerns about our defensive capabilities. Let me assure you that humanity has no interest in threatening galactic peace. We're quite content to develop our worlds in cooperation with our animal partners and contribute to interstellar commerce and diplomacy. But these military capabilities Commander Zexthy describes are purely defensive, Harrison said firmly. We've learned from our history that the best way to maintain peace is to make the cost of aggression prohibitively high. Our partnerships with Earth's ecosystem serve that purpose while also providing benefits to all species involved. Dr. Chen stepped forward to join the conversation. Honorable Speaker, I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, Chief Veterinarian for this colony. Perhaps it would help if you understood that our relationships with other species aren't based on domination or exploitation. They're genuine partnerships built on mutual benefit and respect. You're claiming that predators willingly serve you? Torvan asked incredulously. Not serve, Harrison corrected. Partner with us. They protect our communities because those communities are their homes too. Their offspring are raised alongside human children. Their medical care is provided by human veterinarians. Their food security is guaranteed by human agriculture. We've made them stakeholders in our civilization's success. Zexthi watched the council speaker's expression shift from skepticism to growing alarm. And if someone were to threaten human colonies, then they would face the combined opposition of every species that calls those colonies home, Harrison said matter-of-factly. Predators and prey united in defense of their shared territory. The communication session continued for another hour, with Harrison and Dr. Chen patiently explaining concepts that challenged every assumption about interspecies relations. They described breeding programs spanning millennia, training protocols that enhanced natural abilities rather than suppressing them, and social structures that provided security and purpose to dozens of different species. When the transmission finally ended, Torvan's parting words carried an ominous undertone. The Council will need to review these developments carefully. The implications for galactic security are significant. As the comm unit darkened, Harrison turned to Zexthi with a slight smile. I hope we haven't caused you any political difficulties, Commander. That wasn't our intention. Governor, Zexthi said slowly, I need to ask you a direct question. If a hostile alien force were to attack Earth, what would be the likely outcome? Harrison exchanged looks with Dr. Chen before answering. Honestly, it would be a massacre, but not in the way you might expect. Any invasion force would find themselves fighting not just human military units, but the coordinated resistance of an entire biosphere. Every forest would be full of scouts reporting their movements. Every open area would be patrolled by creatures capable of detecting their presence from kilometers away. Any attempt to establish a beachhead would be met by forces ranging from pack hunters to multi-ton herbivores willing to charge directly into enemy fire. And the invaders would have no allies, Dr. Chen added. No local species would assist them, because every local species has a vested interest in human survival. They'd be fighting alone against an enemy that had recruited the planet itself as an ally. The true horror of humanity's situation became clear to Zexthi then. They weren't just another species that had achieved spaceflight. They were the product of a world so dangerous that survival required forming alliances with apex predators and megafauna. They'd been shaped by countless generations of conflict into the ultimate pack leaders, beings capable of inspiring absolute loyalty in creatures that could easily kill them. Commander, Science Officer Vorth said quietly, we need to return to our ship and compile our report. The Council needs to understand what we're dealing with. As they prepared to leave Earth's surface, Governor Harrison made one final statement that would haunt Zexthi for years to come. Commander, I want you to know that humanity values its place in the galactic community. We hope to contribute positively to interstellar civilization for many centuries to come. But I also want you to understand that anyone who threatens our worlds, our families, or our animal partners will discover exactly why Earth is classified as a Class 12 death world. We didn't just survive here, we recruited the entire planet to our cause. During the flight back to their mothership, the alien crew sat in stunned silence, each processing the implications of what they'd witnessed. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They'd created a form of civilization that turned an entire ecosystem into a unified defense force. As they prepared their report for the Galactic Council, Zexthi knew that everything was about to change. The galaxy had been operating under the assumption that dangerous worlds produced dangerous species in isolation. Earth had proven that dangerous worlds could produce species capable of forming alliances that transcended traditional biological boundaries. The question now was whether the galactic community would welcome humanity as a valuable ally, or whether they would conclude that a species capable of recruiting predators was too dangerous to coexist with. One thing was certain: underestimating humanity would be the last mistake any hostile force would ever make. They had turned their death world into a fortress, and every creature on it was willing to die defending their human partners. The galaxy would never be the same.